Hello and welcome to Tony's Bonsai. Here we've got my group planting of European beech. This forest is one of my favourite plantings. Let's take a look and see what needs doing. I've raised the camera up so you can see from a bit higher, and from there you can see it's getting quite dense, the canopy on the top of this tree. So light's going to be struggling to get through here, and I don't want to risk killing any trees off through lack of light, so I need to get in here and remove some of these leaves. I'm quite happy with the trunk layout of this group. In the last video that I did in winter, I replaced 2 dead trees. So this one here went in and this tree here went in. I've applied a few wires just to sort of manipulate them. And I did put a piece of wire to bend. Where is it? It's the one that's got vet tape on it here. This tree with vet tape, I put some wire on it, did some manipulation, and about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I removed that wire because I really don't want any scarring on the trunk. So that came off. It's done its job now, and all in all, it's growing really well. In a few of my other videos this year, I've been talking a little bit about understanding and implementing the ideas around tree energy when I make my decisions, sort of what time of year to do things and what to do and how to do them. I'm trying to bear in mind the demands of the tree to keep the tree as healthy as possible and develop the best, well, depending whatever I want, either to develop more trunk thickness, thicker branches, more ramification. And in this case, what I've done is I've allowed all the branches to extend. So they've all extended, they've had a good few weeks. The leaves have hardened off now. So these have had, you know, maybe 5 or 6 solid weeks where they've been absorbing lots of sunlight. They've got lots of nutrition and water, and they've really pumped some energy back into the trunks. So now is a good time for me to come back, shorten these extensions, and hopefully develop new branching further back, taking 1 branch to 2 branches, and over time, that'll develop that fine twigging that I'm looking for a nice winter image. And ultimately, a group like this will be, well, I'm developing it for the winter image. So this would be something that you would show in perhaps, you know, in January or February when there's no leaves at all on it. You know, with the size of the leaves and the way it grows, it's never going to look great in leaf. And in many ways, when I think of deciduous trees at the best, I think of the bare structure of the tree that you see in winter, and that'd be lovely if I could develop a lovely kind of overall shape. So I'm not trying to individually prune each tree. I'm trying to prune this as a whole, because when you get a copse of beech, as this is supposed to be, they grow and they develop as a whole, as one large tree, and that's kind of my idea. So it's enough talking anyway. It's time to go in and do some pruning. I know that most of the people watching this video understand pruning probably better than me, but I'll just give one quick demonstration of the idea. You can see here, this shoot is this year's growth, and it's got a new bud on the end. It's also got a new bud there at the base of each leaf is beginning to develop, and each of these buds will develop into a new branch. So, for example, I could cut back to here, and that will then send a branch out there, and you'll also get another branch coming from this leaf, possibly one from further back, but that's too leggy. That branch will be too long. So my aim is to go much further back in, look at each branch individually, see what structure I've got, and make the decisions to develop it for the overall enhancement of the design. Or that sounds very pompous, doesn't it? The overall enhancement of the design. What are you going on about? I must have eaten a can of alphabetti spaghetti. Right, so we've got a branch here. This is a good one to show. So it comes up, as I say, this is all this year's growth. What we do have here is a branch where I pruned it previously. Okay, so we've got the main branch coming up here. It gets to this point and we've got one branch coming across, another one going up there. So this is where I've cut back to last year, and it's bifurcated. My decision now is, where do I cut back to from there? Obviously, I want to keep that bifurcation there. I've got a nice leaf there, another leaf there, and I've got one on the back side as well. So what I'll do is I'll cut that there, and hopefully we get a branch from here and a branch from here, which are on either side of this branch, the main one. And then as for this one that comes in this direction, I want to do the same. So again, I've got one nice leaf here, another leaf on the other side. So I'll cut back to those two leaves, and that should give me, again, another bifurcation on each of those individual branches, which over time should look good. You might notice the odd leaf like this that's covered in, well, I don't think that's whitefly. I think they're all dead. I sprayed this tree a couple of weeks ago, so I think they're just like the dead eggs, but probably needs another spray. Whenever I talk about this kind of work, I often refer to the videos of Peter Warren, and one I was watching, well, a while ago now, but what he was saying was, don't get in the habit of just going, here's an extension, 2 leaves, chop. What he says you should do is look a bit further back, as I did on that previous branch, and say, where is it coming from? How strong is that branch? What do I want that branch to do? Because sometimes we may say that branch is a bit weaker and I want to allow it to develop. Therefore, I won't cut back so hard. I might only remove the very end leaf, or I might remove nothing at all. And this is a really good practice to get into. So Peter says anyway, and it does make sense. Here we've got a good example. This interior branch comes out, it's very thin, and I would like that to thicken a little and possibly be part of the tree. I'm not sure yet, but seeing as I'm undecided, I will just leave that to grow and thicken. No leaves will come off that for sure. And this branch here is somewhere in between. I'm pretty sure this one's going to be staying, but it's quite thin, not too bad. I'd like to cut it back, but all I'll do is just remove just the growing tip and leave the rest of these leaves there. As we look in here, we've got a nice trunk coming upwards, good healing on a major cut. I'm not sure when that was done, but we've got several branches branching off. They're a good size, they're a good shape. This is a weak interior one, I'll leave that. And this one's the strongest of them all. It's looking good, it's got some bifurcation, so all I'll do is take the end off that. In fact, it can go back a bit further, this one. So I'll cut this one back to there, and this should allow for some more branching around that area, which will be ideal for the overall canopy shape. I've said many times on my videos, you know, my channel is my bonsai journey, and I just make videos about me sharing the experience as I learn and develop my trees, which I think is great fun. But what I'm not claiming to be is an expert, so if you're after expert instruction, I recommend looking elsewhere. But I sort of pass on the bits that I know, and it can't all be wrong. That's the way I look at it. And we'll see over time, you know, how my trees will develop and how these techniques are going to work. And I suppose the way bonsai works is, to a certain extent, we experiment, we learn what works for us, how to prune individual trees, and then over time we develop that technique, and that's the reason it takes so long to produce decent quality bonsai material. I was watching a video last night, and this is, I'm not calling them or anything like that. I mean, it's everyone does whatever they want to do. I'm a very much live and let live kind of guy. apart from the guy who called me a cheat at tennis last night and I went mental. But that aside, I say chill. And what this video I watched was, it was in America somewhere, and it was an exhibition. There were some lovely trees on display, but nearly all the trees, because they interviewed the owners of the trees, nearly all of them were purchased bonsais. So that, you know, they'd say, oh, I bought this tree 15 years ago and I've been styling it for 6 years, or I bought it whenever and I've been working on it for this long. And I don't know, that for me would not do it. That would not deliver the satisfaction that I'm after. As I say, nothing against people who want to purchase bonsai and do what they do. Great. I've got no issue with it. But for me personally, I love the idea of creating my own trees. And I'm sure many of them will end up having plenty of major mistakes as I learn. But I'd rather look back in 10 years' time and say, do you know, I've got this collection of trees and they're mine. I've made them, I've created them, and everyone's different with bonsai, and that's kind of the way I see the joy of bonsai, is the joy of creation. That's why I love taking cuttings. I love growing seeds. You know, it's all good to me. It's that creative process. There was while I'm just doing this, I thought I may as well just waffle on a bit. I'm sure there'll be a few people skip on, but there'll be a few stick around for my pearls of wisdom. There was a post on Facebook in one of the bonsai groups, and someone commented and said, I've lost these 2 trees or 3 trees. They were not much more than sticks in pots. And they were the description they used was completely devastated. And I probably shouldn't have commented, but what I said was, I think perhaps bonsais may not be for you. And it's got nothing to do with them killing the trees. It's the attitude that you grow a couple of sticks for a couple of years, and if you're completely devastated when they die, you know, it's like, what are you going to do? I remember when my oak died that I'd had for over 20 years, and I was upset a little bit, but I was very much, well, it's gone. And my dad's oak, I've got some really good news on that. I'm going to update on it next week, but his 40-year-old oak that I repotted, it's absolutely full of big swelling buds. The buds that were there are all swelling. Some of them are coming out into leaf, and I'm certain that's going to survive, which is absolutely fantastic. I did take a bit of a punt on that one, but it's great when you take a chance and it works out. You know, if everything you did worked out in bonsai, it would be no fun. You know, that's what we've got to do. We've got to try our best. And sometimes one of the lessons we get from bonsai is sometimes our best is not good enough. They die, and then sometimes it's just out of our control. It's not something we have a say in. You know, you have a cold winter, you have a particularly hot, windy spell, and you may be able to get your tree into some shade and save it. But sometimes, you know, you don't have access to a polytunnel or whatever, and, you know, it's always a lesson. Everything in bonsai is a constant lesson, really. Some of them are bonsai lessons, and some of them are life lessons. It doesn't surprise me that bonsai, you know, as we know it, is associated with Japan, and they're very much into the Zen Buddhism, you know, and it just fits in very nicely. I've talked about it in the past, the idea of being present. And that's what you've got to be when you're working on these trees. You're just with the tree. I would hate the idea of music being on while I was doing this. Just that would not be pleasurable to me. I like to do it in silence. And I laughed the other day at Jason, one of Jason's video, Jason Hanrahan's, and he did a video and he cut himself with his scissors, you know. So at that moment, he probably wasn't being present enough. So there's another lesson in there for him. But I'm sure it was only a minor nick. Them lads from Yorkshire, they're not quite made of the stuff us Lancashire lads are. So I'm getting on with this now. It's been sort of reduced as I work through. I'm not at the level where I can just talk and prune well. I admire Corin Tomlinson when he's working on a tree and he's talking away, and you can tell he's just it's so instinctive to him where to cut, what to do. He can be talking away. With me, this is like burning my brain as I'm trying to combine talking something that sounds somewhat logical and also trying to make the right decisions as I prune the tree. But again, love it. Great fun. And it doesn't matter if you make the odd mistake on a tree like this. You know, if you cut in the slightly wrong place or you make a couple of errors, it's not the end of the world. You know, a plant like a beech, they grow so readily. They just keep coming back, and even if you completely messed it up, come next year, they'll go again. But one of the things I did learn last year is that they do really like to be heavily fertilised. I under-fertilised them last year, and towards the end of the summer, my beech sort of started going an anemic yellowish colour, very pale. I looked up online and I was simply not feeding them properly. But with my new organic feeding regime, they seem to be great this year, very healthy, much more vigorous, producing lots more buds and lots more healthy foliage. So I'm sure given time, this will do well. And then the next thing after this prune, will be in the winter, when I'll come back in, look at the overall winter image, and then go in and make some bigger decisions on some of the branches. Decide, oh, this needs to go, this can stay. And that's more structural, because I'm still developing the structure at the same time as trying to build a little bit of sort of ramification. So yeah, it's going well. I'm really happy with how this has worked out, considering I was just going in, reducing the lengths where I thought they needed reducing. It's produced an overall shape that I find really pleasing. I've got my cutters out though, because this here is just coming out too far. So there's no point waiting for the winter for this. I know this is definitely going to go back. So I may as well remove that now. Give it a chance to sort of heal over. And there's one here a little bit as well. That's quite a long one, but I don't want to go mad going in redesigning the tree now, but I will take that branch there. Yeah, I'll take that one off. That's it. I'm not doing any more of that kind of work, although that one's quite long there. This is the last one. That's the last one. That's gone. Right, I'm not doing any more because I'll just end up with nothing. So there we go. I think that's worked out really nicely. Looking good. Looks decent from all angles, which is what you want from a group or forest planting. And as always, thanks for joining me. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.